Hello everyone and welcome back to the UConn Huskies Dynasty. In the last episode, UConn lost in truly embarrassing fashion in the Myrtle Beach Bowl to Bowling Green, a team I said was a weaker opponent like we got last season. I was kind of trash talking them, and they really put us in our place. Sometimes that Heisman difficulty, it just kicks in, and when it kicks in, you know it. And man, that was a significantly tougher game than the Ohio State victory that we got earlier in the season. But in today's episode, it's all about the offseason. We will get through offseason number 2 and prepare ourselves for year number 3. So let's get a recap in. We started out with a win versus Kennesaw State and then lost kind of a heartbreaker to Syracuse, a team that ended up being pretty good, although they didn't finish very strong. We end up beating Pittsburgh easily, 28-10. We end up beating FCS Southeast very easily. That's expected. We lose an absolute shootout to App State. The defense looked horrendous. A really close victory over FIU. Another game when the defense actually looked really bad. Had a bye week and then went into Ohio State and got a crazy upset victory, 17-7 over the Buckeyes. And then we kept that momentum, beating Oregon State in overtime, 27-24, then losing a heartbreaker to South Alabama in overtime, 38-37. We finish out the year with a win over Duke, 21-3, looking very dominant. I will also point out South Alabama is the point where I changed the sliders to hopefully try to make the series a lot more difficult. It felt like we were winning too much, especially the wins over Ohio State and Oregon State. Lose the first game versus South Alabama, but then dominate Duke. Lose a close game to UTSA, who is now ranked 21st, by the way. And then we lose to UCF to end our regular season. And then, of course, get absolutely killed by Bowling Green in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Here's the standings in the various conferences. A few bowl games have happened now, so you might see teams with 13 games played like Clemson at 10-3. But here's how the ACC wrapped up. Florida State and Clemson will be exiting. In the American, it's Tulane at 10-2, and they made the college football playoffs. They're a team I think should move to like the ACC, for example. Same with UTSA. I think that they're probably ready for a bigger challenge as well. Again, ignore the fact that they're a 76 overall. I believe that that is a visual bug. They were clearly a much better team, and I think even on paper, they're a much better team than a 76. I think they're probably closer to Tulane with like an 82. Here's the rest of the American. Memphis was a team I was considering moving to a bigger conference as well, but finishing 1-11, I don't think that that's going to happen. Big 12, Kansas State's 11-2, UCF 11-3. And then here is the rest of the Big 12. Not sure why Texas Tech is ranked for some reason. And Arizona State finishes as the bottom Big 12 team. Big 10, Oregon, the number 1 ranked team in the country, 12-1 on the season. Penn State and Ohio State both in the playoffs. And then the rest of the Big 10, definitely not quite as good. Conference USA won by Liberty. I absolutely think it's time for them to move on from the Conference USA. The Independents, of course, us and Notre Dame. Notre Dame finished 6-6. We were 7-6. In the MAC, it's Buffalo finishing 7-4. Western Michigan and Bowling Green 8-5. Akron, Kent State 2-10, and UMass in their first season in MAC play finish 4-8. Nevada 11-2, the top team in the Mountain West. Boise State in second. In the Pac-2, it's Washington State and Oregon State. For whatever reason, Washington State only played 11 games. They did not play 12 full games. In the SEC, it's A&M at 11-2. Alabama 10-3, Georgia 9-3, Texas, another one of those teams 8-4 but still ranked despite being 4-4 in conference play. And then at the bottom is South Carolina by a lot, finishing 1-11. Even Vandy at 5-7, doing a lot better than them. And then lastly, the Sun Belt. Troy finishing 11-1, 7-1 in the conference, but they did not make the conference championship game. And the reason for that is they lost to Louisiana. So Louisiana gets the tiebreaker and got to take on Old Dominion in the conference championship instead. So Troy, despite technically being a better team, didn't make the playoff, and they didn't get a Sun Belt championship appearance. Kind of a brutal way to end the year. It's their one loss was to Louisiana, and that's what cost them. The Heisman winner was, of course, Avery Johnson. And then here is the rest of the top 5. Here are the award winners. Player of the year goes to Drew Aller, the quarterback of Penn State. Victor Rosa finishing 4th for the UConn Huskies. Just a testament to how good he truly was. For best defensive players, Julian Simon gets 2nd and Zachary Spears gets 5th. So UConn getting some nods. Best defensive back, Cam Chadwick and Lee Millette are 1 and 2. And then Chris Grubbs 10, Jordan Wright 12. Best running back, Victor Rosa finishes 2nd to Darius Taylor of Minnesota. Minnesota. Best receiver is Jaden Clark. Didn't have anyone here, unfortunately. Shamar Porter did not finish the season as strong as he started it. Julian Simon and Zachary Spears 1 and 2 for best linebackers this season. And that about does it for the UConn Husky Awards. Here's how everyone finished the season. Nick Evers with 3,400 yards. 28 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, 71% completion percentage. Not a bad year. I think this is technically a down year from his first season in the series. Let's double check that. No, it's very similar actually, but he had 40 passing touchdowns in year number 1, but the same amount of interceptions, slightly worse completion percentage. We did end up running the ball a lot more here in season number 2, relying heavily on Victor Rosa. So it kind of makes sense for the touchdown numbers to regress. But it is interesting that his passing yards stayed almost exactly the same. For rushing, Victor Rosa finishes with nearly 1,200 yards, has 6 touchdowns. Darrell Robinson saw a lot of action in the first half of the season, but then we ended up just going almost exclusively to Victor in the second half of the season. He did have 4 rushing touchdowns though. Leading receiver was Shamar Porter with 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns, but Victor Rosa had 11 touchdown receptions for a total of 17 touchdowns on the season for Victor. And then with the 765 receiving yards plus the 1,185 rushing yards for a total of 1,950 all-purpose yards. Absolute animal is Victor Rosa. A shame that he was only 50 yards shy of 2,000. Skylar Bell came on strong at the end of the season. I really ended up liking him a lot. Anson was pretty good throughout, but another guy that kind of came on strong in the back half of the year. When we changed the playbook and the sliders, I think that it allowed me to spread the ball a lot more, which is why you see guys like Bell and Hansen and Gathings all kind of making up ground at that point. Gathings with 314 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Dejon Harrison really only played a lot in that one game against Oregon State, but did have 2 touchdown grabs and 153 yards. As for blocking, Wes Ho gave up 9 sacks on the season, and then it was Rizzi with 6, Bass with 5, Morosky 5, Cassidy with 3, and Wilson with 2. Defensively, Zachary Spears hits 114 total tackles on the season. Lee Millett III with 99, and then Chris Grubbs with 89. Our leader in TFLs was Julian Simon, led by a lot, 23 tackles for loss. And then Matt Hoffman, the junior, with 14. He's going to have to step up next season, kind of be the new Julian Simon if we want another pretty good edge rusher. Zachary Spears with 13 TFLs, Lovelace 12, Chadwick 11, and Chute with 10. Leader in sacks was Simon with 10.5, and Hoffman had 7.5, and our leader in interceptions, Spears and Wright, each with 4, Chadwick, Grubbs, Millett with 2, and Brinson with 1. The guy I'll just highlight in general is Raheem Lovelace. Had an excellent year, I feel like, as a true freshman linebacker. Ended up 4th on the team in total tackles, had 12 TFLs, 2.5 sacks. He did have a few dropped interceptions, so he could have had an even better stat line, but still, this guy's going to be an absolute animal. And I think Zachary Spears, who was like the main starting sub linebacker this season, can leave happy knowing that his position is in good hands with a guy like Raheem Lovelace. As for kicking, Zach Costanzo finishes 10 for 17, was originally 10 for 15. I think I missed 2 field goals in that game against Bowling Green. And then Connor Stutz, our punter, 1 yard shy of 1,600. I am curious if anyone broke any UConn records though. As for single game records, it looks like no. As for season records, no. Nick Evers obviously broke the record last season for passing touchdowns in a single season, and Sheffield with receiving touchdowns in a single season, but no other records broken this year. And unfortunately, no career records broken either. Victor Rosa, had he had all of our seasons under this new offense, probably would have broken the rushing yards record. Nick Evers, though, assuming he plays his full senior season, will likely break Dan Orlovsky's record for passing touchdowns in a UConn Huskies career. So here's the college football playoff bracket one more time. Feel free to pause and take a look. And I forgot to look at All-Americans, and Victor Rosa ends up as the HB1 All-American. Did we have any other All-American first team members? We did not, but congratulations to Victor Rosa. What an incredible year he had. And I'm actually surprised to see that Raheem Lovelace did not make the freshman All-American team. But unfortunately, I guess he got beat out by the University of Miami's Cameron Pruitt. Here's our early national signing day, by the way. If you hadn't seen it yet, here are the players that we managed to get signed. We've honestly had a really good recruiting class. Even if we can't get these last 10 or so guys, I'm pretty happy with the way the class has turned out. And at this point, we have the rank 37 class in the country. We were able to get 5 4-star players. There are a few of these guys that we are probably going to lose. In fact, I think about the top 5 guys we're probably going to get snatched from us. All the teams are kind of making up ground, and I can't change ours at this point. In fact, Bibbs, I think, is basically just gone to Alabama at this point. We're probably going to lose Sue to Florida, and we're probably going to lose Cleland to A&M. We might even lose Joshua Dora to UNC, but we might get the commit before it's too late. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and advance to bowl week number 2. So here's an updated CFP bracket. Liberty upsetting Boston College. Boston College spent a few weeks at the number 1 spot in the country. Georgia beating Penn State, UCF loses to Alabama, and Tulane upsets Ohio State. So you've got A&M versus Tulane, Clemson versus Alabama, Oregon against Georgia, and K-State against Liberty. So we advance again to week number 3. And Liberty's run finally ends. Kansas State barely squeaking by, honestly, 31-28. A&M dominates Tulane, so no Cinderella runs. It's Clemson versus Texas A&M and Georgia at Kansas State. Joshua Dora does actually commit to the UConn Huskies, so that's good to see. At least we didn't lose him to North Carolina. And I haven't been told we're locked out of anyone yet. So maybe we can still go after them when we get to the sort of final recruiting section. So now we're on to the national championship. It looks like it's Texas A&M versus Georgia. Georgia winning pretty easily, and 41-29 for A&M over Clemson. So you got number 2 Texas A&M and number 9 Georgia in the national championship. And it looks like it's Texas A&M winning 27-17, and they are your college football champions here in year number 2 of the UConn dynasty. Now we're on to players leaving. So, we've got Karsten Cassidy and Brian Toller trying to exit. Karsten Cassidy not happy with our playing style. I guess he has deemed that we didn't throw the ball enough. Losing him would honestly kind of suck. So I am going to try to persuade Karsten Cassidy, and it has failed. So we'll probably need to find a new right tackle, maybe in the transfer portal. And then I talked about Brian Toller. He is in line to be the starting tight end next season. Would love to bring him back, and it has failed as well despite the high persuasion chance. So we'll need a new tight end and probably a new right tackle. And I'm noticing, despite the fact that I redshirted Cam Edwards, I'm losing him to graduation. So we just wasted this final year with him. Hopefully that's not actually true, but I'm guessing that he's just not going to be on the team next year. That's really unfortunate. Would have definitely used him all year if I knew that was going to be the case. The whole point of redshirting him was because I didn't want to lose him and Victor Rosa at the same time. Plus we had Robinson who could kind of fill his shoes. It's not the end of the world. We have Max Cadet coming in, and we of course have Darrell Robinson, who's already better than him, but that does suck. Other guys we're losing to graduation include Skylar Bell, our punter Connor Stutz, Julian Simon, Jordan Wright, Wes Ho, Lewis Hansen, Alex Honig, Damon Brinson, Tyquan Taylor, Mike Wilson, Chris Grubbs, Liam Fuller, Josiah Gathings, Dejon Harrison, Lee Millett III, Victor Rosa, Zachary Spears, Price Yates, Jacob Rizzi, and KC Branch. Here are the draft results. I am curious. Victor Rosa did get drafted. Let's go. He's a round 7 pick, but I am okay with that. Having a guy be drafted is awesome, and the fact that it's Victor Rosa is even better. Had a great year, is a great player. Any team is lucky to have him, and round 7 is an absolute steal. And now we're on to the transfer portal. And we haven't actually been locked out by any of these players. Now it's sort of a matter of how hard are these other teams going to be going after them, though. So there is a tackle in Taylor Spillman who is interested in transferring to UConn. We can definitely go after him now that we have lost Karsten Cassidy, previously on New Mexico State. And then we do have a couple free safeties that are 4-star guys interested in potentially transferring, in Ryan Grooms from Army and Sabur Kareem from Illinois. We did just lose our top 2 starters, so it would be nice to get a safety or 2 in. With losing Cam Edwards, at least as far far as the game is telling me, I would like to bring in a halfback and probably a power back. I like the look of Isaiah Carlson from UCLA. We'll try to bring him in. So I've added a bunch of potential transfers to the recruiting board. Big needs for us: tight end, offensive line, and honestly a new halfback as well. So this is how I've got the board lined up for now. 675 hours is really not too much when there's this many needs. I'm sending the house on a few players and then sort of allocating small amounts of points elsewhere to just get some influence to remain on the board. I did remove some big name guys. I think the most notable one was Shaquille Cleland. He was a 4-star safety. His #1 school, and the school that was getting more influence than us, was Texas A&M, who just won a national championship. I don't think we're competing there. So we advanced to week 2 of recruiting. Nick Alonso commits, so I'm glad we went after him. Syracuse and Penn State really want Sabur Kareem. I think that we can compete here. We have a really good hard sell and a really good soft sell. I'm going to try to contend for him. I think I will remove Ryan Grooms from the board, though. I don't think battling the same 2 teams for 2 different safeties is going to be super productive. I'd rather use my points elsewhere. We did also pass Florida on Taulia Sue, a left guard, and I am unironically having a hard time finding a punter. I sent the house on Gabe Lacombo, but now Kansas State wants him and gained like 1 billion more influence points than we did. Look at how much more influence Missouri got on John Hicks than us. That's actually crazy. So here's how I've got the points structured now. I'm sending the house on Blake Franks. We were only sending 10 points before, and we were getting only about half of the influence of Vanderbilt. So now that we're sending the house, we should get a lot more. I really, really want Isaiah Carlson. I am sending the house his way, and we have also scheduled a visit as well. And I'm going to try to compete for Sabur Kareem. No guarantees we can get this one, though. It looks like Syracuse and Penn State might just be able to provide more influence than I can, but we'll see. We appear to have a really, really good hard sell for him, if I'm correct. Kind of taking a risk here because I don't think we're going to get him if we just continue to send the house. So I switched to a hard sell, soft sell, and assumed that the hard sell includes playing time as well. It could have been a couple other things. If it is, we're probably going to miss here, but if I'm right, we have a good chance, I think. Taylor Spillman, another guy, had very few points on, but we were still 3rd on the board, so I'm sending the house on him instead. And we're adding more points to Jaden Williams, sending the house on Bachelder, 15 points on Vaughns, who nobody has offered for yet, and then sending the house on Brendan Wooten because we really need a new tight end pretty bad. So we'll go ahead and advance again and see if we get any commitments. See what changes happen. No more commits. Oh, we lose Sue, really? Florida State goes all out at the end and steals him right out from under us. That's actually so unfortunate. We took the lead back from them. I had a visit scheduled. I had maximum points. There's nothing else I could have done for Sue, unfortunately. Florida just decided they wanted him and they took him. It looks like we probably tied, and then I believe it goes to coach prestige, which of course Florida has. That means we need to go after O-line pretty significantly. We did gain ground against Baylor for Bachelder, and we've taken the lead completely on Vaughns. We are sort of keeping pace with Western Kentucky for Evan Daly, a 2-star tackle, and that's with only 10 points in the mix. We're about to get a center in Larry Adams, so at least we'll get 1 interior offensive lineman. We have taken the lead on Kareem, so I think that my bet paid off. It did indeed. It was correct. He is visiting Syracuse and Penn State week 5. It looks like we might get him to commit before that. That would be a pretty big deal and a pretty big help at safety for next season. UCF is now in the mix on strong safety Jaden Williams, and it looks like they're just going to run away with it. We could add more points, and we do have them. Do we really want to try to compete with UCF, though? Being that we keep losing guards, I'm going to go super hard after Blake Franks. I really want to bring him in. We could switch to a hard sell if I can figure out what it is. So it could be coach's favorite, because I know that coach prestige is one of them because it's his deal breaker. Or it could be student of the game. Our better hard sell is student of the game. I don't want to risk it. I'm just going to keep sending the house, and I'll add an additional 15 points his way as well. I am unironically doing a hard sell, soft sell on Roger DeLuca. We are losing our punter. We've already lost our punter. He's graduated. So we need one really bad. And Pitt is just really fighting us tooth and nail to the end for Roger DeLuca. So I am spending max points on this guy. It feels like a waste. I feel like I have to. We need a punter. I want a 3-star. We're going after DeLuca. So here's the change to the board. Blake Franks is getting maximum points and has a visit scheduled. Although Vandy did not get a ton of influence this past week. I'm going super hard for Isaiah Carlson. He has a visit scheduled and we are spending maximum points. Same thing for Sabur Kareem and for Taylor Spillman. Also going after Batchelder, who has near maximum points. I am going up to 50 on Vons. Despite us being the only offer, I know that just if Clemson gets in the mix, we're going to lose this guy. So just trying to steal him before Clemson even has the chance. 50 on Wooten to try to get our tight end 1. And then a few more points on Daly. Some more points on Adams to hopefully just get that commit. And then some on Rudock, Pears, Giuliano, and then of course a maximum 65 on Roger DeLuca. So we advance to the final week. Hopefully we see a bunch of commits here. That's what I'm hoping for. We do get Larry Adams, the 2-star center. We do get Jason Pears, a 3-star middle linebacker. We lose Kareem to Syracuse. I am so done with Syracuse stealing my recruits, especially defensive backs, man. That is so brutal. Again, a situation where I don't think there's anything I could have done. I'm guessing that we tied in terms of the influence score, and then it goes to the team with the higher prestige coach, which in this case is Syracuse. I'm going to kill Syracuse someday. We're still first on Carlson, and we have gained the most influence. We're still first on Franks, but UNC and Vandy are still close. We're first on Spillman. We've taken over Baylor on Batchelder, and here is Clemson. So now they're in the mix. So we'll go ahead and schedule a visit for him. We decided to add Kai Stokes to the board, a junior safety, since we lost out on Kareem. Definitely want to bring one safety in. And I've also added Alex Heininger, a junior guard. Definitely need to bring in a guard. He didn't have any offers yet. I'm only putting 25 points his way. And now it's sort of just a wait and see type of moment again. I have maxed out the points on Manny Vons. Hopefully Clemson doesn't just swoop in and steal him. We've also scheduled a visit for week 4. This is the final week though. So this is all of my points. Hopefully we get all these guys. We did gain a ton of influence for Roger DeLuca. So we'll advance one more time. Hopefully we see a ton of commits here. As we get Isaiah Carlson, I actually think that's a huge pickup for our backfield. We get Taylor Spillman, needed offensive lineman. We get Brennan Wooten, needed a tight end really bad. Get Blake Franks, which is huge. We needed a new guard. We get Theo Batchelder, another tackle. Nick Giuliano, a 2-star free safety. We get Roger DeLuca, thank God. We get Kai Stokes, who I only added there at the very end. We get Alex Heininger, who I also added there at the very end. And we lost Vons to Clemson. I mean, could have seen it coming. So we ended up with 28 signees, it looks like. So a big time recruiting class, lots of 3-stars, just chock full of 3-stars. Couple 4-stars as well, and guys like Wayne Rourke, Marcus Angler, Manny Smith, Dorian Tobin, and Max Cadet. Some 3-star gems like Nate Putu, the strong safety. I really think that this was a strong recruiting class from us. Let's see how everyone did. Notre Dame with the top recruiting class. USC with second, and here is the rest of the top 10. In fact, I'll just keep scrolling through the list. Feel free to pause and take a look. I'm going to scroll until we find ourselves. Syracuse with 29, stealing a number of players from us again. They actually got Grooms and Kareem, the 2 safeties, the 2 transfer safeties that I was after at the very end there. They love stealing defensive backs from me. We end up with the 35th best class in the country, better than Utah. We can also at this time see what everyone's development trait was. So let's just start at the top of the board. Heininger, normal. You got impact for Kai Stokes. He's a transfer. A lot of these top guys are transfers, so keep that in mind. Impact for Franks, impact for Carlson. Star for punter Roger DeLuca, which is very interesting. You got normal for Larry Adams, impact for Jason Pears. Star for Nick Alonso. Glad I went super hard after him in the end. Normal for Joshua Dora. That's a little disappointing. Impact for Dalton Skmizniak. Impact for Alani Sandridge, and he also has the clear-headed mental ability. You've got star for free safety Kevin Simonson. Huge pickup. Normal for Moses Newcomb. Normal for 4-star Wayne Rourke. Normal for 4-star tight end Marcus Angler. Normal for 4-star right tackle Manny Smith. Impact for Dorian Tobin. Could have been better. Impact for Dom Osgood, a 2-star gem left tackle. Max Cadet with impact as well. Definitely, I think, the halfback of the future with this team. Impact for Nate Putu. Normal for Ted Booth. Impact for Terry Overhauser. And normal for Dan Boyd. So no elites this time, only a couple of stars. Crazy to think that our first recruiting class had 3 elites. And now we get to do position changes. So really the only guys I want to change are probably the athletes. Let's see what Dalton Skmizniak is good at. He's actually a really good tight end, but he's so underweight for that. He's a 69 overall slot corner as well. Let's see what this kid is good at. He does have good catching. Of course, he kind of was recruited as a receiver. His coverage ratings are actually pretty decent. 73 and 64, 68 pursuit. Wonder if this is a guy that we could sort of play on both sides anyway, actually. Decent tackling at 69. Definitely could see him as a slot corner, absolutely. But I think where I really want him is at wide receiver, as he was kind of advertised. And then there's Dorian Tobin, who of course I think is the quarterback of the future. Apparently, he's already an incredible halfback, starting at a 79 overall. He's a 75 scrambler quarterback, 75 receiver. Pretty much wherever I put this dude, he's already incredible. Truly an athlete. 98 speed feels like it would be a waste anywhere other than wide receiver, halfback, or quarterback. 93 throw power, 87 short, 82 medium, 82 deep, 81 throw on the run. I mean, this is a quarterback. But I mean, let's see, is he just absolutely incredible at other things? Look at this guy, 75 man, 70 zone, 75 pursuit, 72 power moves, 77 finesse moves. Block shedding isn't the best, but he does have good hit power, tackling, and decent play rec. We could play this guy at almost every position on the field, and he would make an impact. I am going to put him as a quarterback, and I probably am going to redshirt him. But keep in mind, he has competition. Chester Roach has star development. So Roach has kind of a leg up on him, has probably a higher ceiling, and now has a year under his belt in the college system, although Tobin does start immediately as a higher overall. By the way, I did absolutely get fooled. Cam Edwards is with the team. We'll see what kind of upgrades he gets. The game told me he graduated. That's the whole reason I went after Isaiah Carlson. Also, Max Cadet comes in as a true 75 overall freshman. Time to see training results, and I was right. We're about an 82 overall. Our best player now is junior halfback Darrell Robinson. Nick Evers for his senior year is an 86. Raheem Lovelace in his true sophomore season is an 86 overall. Edwards is up to an 85. Talk about a 1-2 punch with Robinson and Edwards. Porter is an 84. Joey Terrell, who he redshirted, is now an 83 middle linebacker with 91 speed. Our sub-linebacking core with Lovelace and Joey Terrell of the future is disgusting. Jarvarius Sims becomes our best corner, up to an 83. Ben Morosky up to an 83. Nathan Voorhees up to an 82. He has 73 speed. This guy is super, super slow. I'm not sure that he's going to start at linebacker. Could definitely start him on the D-line. Cam Chadwick's up to an 82. Gerard Byler goes up to an 81. He is probably who I would start instead at outside linebacker, because I think we're going to switch to like a true 4-3 now that Julian Simon is gone. Curvins Chew up to an 81. Jake Kiernan. Let's just go position by position. How about that? Welliver is up to a 75. Chester Roach got nothing. He was, I think, a 66 or a 67 overall last season. Basically no upgrades. Really unfortunate, honestly, because that just straight up means that Tobin is probably the guy after Evers leaves. So of course your transfers don't actually get upgrades, meaning that Carlson is now just 5th on our board for halfbacks. So even though he transferred in, it's really unfortunate. We will probably use him as a fullback though. Wide receiver 1 is Shamar Porter. Absolutely not surprising at all. Jackson Harper is definitely being used. Tight end 1 is currently Brennan Wooten, but I think I'm going to let the true freshman Marcus Engler start. He has 85 speed. That is like a true difference maker offensively, and he is going to torch linebackers over the middle. Currently left tackle 1 is Taylor Spillman, the guy that we just got to transfer at a 75. So the offensive line, I think, notably has gotten worse, because our starting left guard is Thomas Curtis, a 76. Starting center is Jake Kiernan, an 80. Right guard is Ben Morosky, and right tackle is Torian Johnson, or perhaps Jaden Bass. So yeah, I do think that our offensive line is actually worse, which is really bad considering where it was at last season. Here's the defensive line though. You've got Cleto Chol actually passing Matt Hoffman up to an 80 overall as a junior. Right end is Logan Stern up to a 77. Quincy Bryan passed in overall. D-tackle 1, of course, is Curvins Chute up to an 81. Passmore is a 79. Calvin Whitaker is a 76. Could consider playing him, or at the very least, he'll be a starter in his sophomore season. Byler went up to an 81. Addison Biggs up to a 75. Middle linebackers, of course, Raheem Lovelace and Joey Terrell absolutely becoming very, very good. 86 and 83 respectively. Right outside linebacker is D'Angelo Townsend, but we might play somebody else there. Like maybe we move Biggs over there. Townsend is pretty good though. There's also, of course, Benji Butt, who I know you guys love. So we did have Jarvarius Sims go all the way up to an 83. He does have 89 man coverage, but he's kind of slow with only the 88 speed. My original intention was to have Santos and Kiki be the starters. They didn't receive big upgrades like Joey Terrell did, unfortunately. They should probably still start just because of the elite development. They're going to improve a lot faster than other guys like AJ Hepburn, even though AJ Hepburn did see a pretty significant upgrade. Cole McDaniel is currently the #1 free safety on the team, although we could give the nod to Robert Butts, and we could also give the nod to Kai Stokes, who we just brought in, who has easily the best speed. And then the starting strong safety, a guy who transferred last season, is Levain Scruggs at a 78. So I think we're definitely worse in a lot of ways. I think our weapons offensively are a lot stronger than they were last year, outside of missing, of course, Victor Rosa. I don't really see how the defense is an 82. That sort of feels almost like a typo. So now we get to change the conferences and encourage transfers. How many guys do we have to kick off of the team? Only 6. That's actually not as bad as I was anticipating. Part of me is scared to kick out Tucker McDonald because Cole Welliver is at risk of transferring, and McDonald then could easily be the starter. But at the same time, at this point, we've got Dorian Tobin. His deal breaker is proximity to home. He is basically not going to transfer. So should we just let Tucker McDonald go? He's got 3 younger guys who I would maybe argue are already better than him underneath him. I'll come back to it. Maybe we don't have to. So we are actually losing Mel Brown and Cam Edwards this season. Do we get Daniel Shaban to transfer? Maybe. The first guy I'm going to transfer out is Cole McDaniels. Don't think we need him at this point with the other free safeties. I am going to send Daniel Shaban away. He's a junior. Carlson and Robinson are both juniors. Like, he's just not going to see the field next season, even after the 2 seniors leave. So goodbye, Daniel. Good luck elsewhere. I have officially transferred out all the players I needed to. Tucker McDonald got to stay. I ended up transferring a few guys that I don't think really were mentioned too much. There was a right end, Quincy Bryan, who played a bit last season, but he was a junior, I believe, had a junior ahead of him, and has freshmen who are almost as good as him already behind him. And we are good to go for year number 3. So now comes maybe the most interesting part of the video, and that is conference realignment. First things first, Florida State and Clemson will be leaving the ACC. I think that this is probably going to happen in real life. I guess we'll find out in a few years' time. But I think both programs want out, and I think that they'll probably be headed to the SEC. So Florida State and Clemson join the SEC, make it an 18-team conference. And that'll be all the SEC will do, maybe forever at this point. And for a good long while, I thought about having Cal and Stanford leave at the same time to head back to a reformed Pac-12. But the more I think about it, the more I don't necessarily think that they would. They're kind of known as fairly stingy programs. They didn't really want to be in that Pac-12, obviously, and they didn't want new teams to join the Pac-12. And a lot of teams that I don't think they would consider up to their standards are now joining a new Pac-12. I don't think that they would want in it, at least at this point. If we put this in a real life hypothetical scenario, Stanford and Cal are coming off of pretty successful seasons in the ACC, an ACC that just got weaker and still has an auto bid to the college football playoff. If I'm Cal and Stanford, I want to stay in here to see if I can make the playoffs in the next couple of seasons and then maybe reevaluate, because obviously the cost of traveling this far to places like Miami is going to add up over time, and you're probably not getting a huge amount of revenue share being a newer team in the ACC. So I think that they could leave in the future. I don't necessarily think that they would leave in 2026, which is where we are right now. So I think they will be staying in the ACC. And I think one team that will be joining the ACC from the AAC is Tulane. They just appeared in the college football playoff. They had a very, very good season. They're a quite good team, and I think with the ACC getting weaker, it makes a ton of sense for Tulane to join the ACC. Another team I think makes a lot of sense would be USF, and this is rumored to be happening in real life as well. Tulane and USF hypothetically to join the ACC. We are at an odd number of teams. That is what they were at before. And you might be thinking, well, UConn was going to join the ACC. I don't think so anymore. a lot of you may have heard the real life rumors that UConn might be joining the Big 12 in 2026 in all sports except for football. And the reason for that is UConn is quite good at a lot of other sports, but they're pretty bad at football. But in this alternate universe we have created, UConn has become pretty decent at football, and now they're clearly on the up and up. Just had a really good recruiting class, won one of their last 2 bowl games, have appeared in 2 in a row, and have had 2 winning seasons in a row. So with that being said, I think for 2026, UConn, instead of the ACC, is joining the Big 12. And I like this a lot. I think it's super, super fun. It makes way too much sense from a basketball standpoint. You've got UConn, Kansas, Houston, Arizona, some huge basketball names, Baylor, all in the same conference. Makes way too much sense from a basketball standpoint. And I think with UConn just getting better year after year in football in this alternate universe we've created, it makes a lot of sense for them to just join in general. So UConn, instead of the ACC, will be joining the Big 12 this season. And I do think it presents more of a challenge than the new ACC. With Florida State and Clemson leaving, the ACC, I think, is now easily the 4th best conference of the Power 4 conferences, the Big 12 being 3rd, but still pretty solid. I mean, you've got UCF, Kansas State is quite good. I know their overall doesn't suggest it, but they simulate super, super well. Utah, of course, is a very, very good team. TCU is a very good team. Arizona State, Baylor. I think this is a super fun conference, and I think there's a lot of interesting teams that we're going to be able to play in future seasons. Now, I don't want the Big 12 to have an odd number of teams, so I do think one more team should be joining the Big 12. And I think a team that makes a lot of sense to join with UConn is Liberty. And the reason I say that is because West Virginia is kind of on an island in the Big 12, sort of in a northeast type of region. UConn is obviously very northeast in Connecticut, and then Liberty is located in Virginia. So this adds 2 sort of regional teams for West Virginia to be able to battle it out with, which is something that I feel like they would want in the conference. And it brings in 2 teams that are quickly becoming competitive. I mean, Liberty is ranked 10th. That's higher than UCF. I like the look of this new Big 12 quite a bit. It's not a massive change, but I think it brings 2 very competitive teams into what is becoming an even more competitive conference. Now, we could bring up, would any other teams elect to leave the ACC at this time with Florida State and Clemson leaving? Like Duke, I think makes a lot of sense to join the Big 12 as well, another sort of powerhouse basketball school. I would love UNC to join as well because it brings another powerhouse basketball school. But if they leave, I think NC State has to leave as well. And while that would be fun, and I think maybe we could do it in future seasons, it does absolutely decimate the ACC going into next season. So I'm not going to do it just yet. I think we give it 2 more seasons, kind of sitting how it's sitting, and then we reevaluate at that point. But they're back to an odd number of teams with USF and Tulane joining. I also think that for now, the Big 10 is going to remain entirely the same. I do think that Notre Dame to the ACC does make quite a bit of sense, but I think that they love their independent status, and they have said time and time again that they don't really have intentions of joining a conference. So I think for now, another situation, I'm going to let it sit for probably the next 2 seasons, and we can reevaluate in 2028. The MAC stays the same. Mountain West has been absolutely decimated, and we might make some other changes here, but this is what I've moved into the Pac-12 for now. It's sort of the Pac-10 at this moment in time. I brought in the teams that I think make the most sense from a viewership and sort of revenue standpoint, as well as some competition. Obviously, I think Boise State is the most obvious one, a very good program year after year. Nevada just had an incredible year. They made a ton of sense to bring in here. UNLV, obviously being located around Las Vegas, makes a lot of sense as a huge market. And then I added Air Force, Colorado State, and Wyoming. Colorado State and Wyoming have one of the best group of 5 conference rivalries, so I think that they needed to move as a pair. And I added Air Force because I just think everyone kind of loves these military academies. I did want to move Fresno State, San Jose State, New Mexico. In fact, I'd even be fine with all 4 of these teams joining this reformed Pac-12. Unfortunately, you cannot get rid of conferences or completely dissolve conferences in College Football 25. It's a feature that I think really, really stinks. I think it would be great if we could, or at the very least, we could just leave them empty and bring them back later if we want to. But if I wanted to add, like Fresno State, for example, to the Pac-12, it does not allow me to do so. They will stay in the Mountain West because each conference has to have a minimum of 4 teams. So the options here are to bring some teams into the Mountain West, maybe from the Sun Belt, maybe from Conference USA, or the Mountain West becomes sort of the new Pac-12, where they're like almost independent but have a few conference opponents. It's an interesting situation. In real life, I don't think that this would be too much of an issue. I think the Mountain West has a few decent teams that they could just elevate to the FBS, like Montana State and like North Dakota State. Hopefully in future versions of this game, the FCS schools are in the game and you have the option to elevate them. I think for now, I'm going to leave this as it is, where the Mountain West is now sort of just a new Pac-12. Let me know what you guys think, because if we wanted to, we could of course move New Mexico State and like UTEP to the Mountain West. But then that kind of flattens the Conference USA, and then we have a flattened Conference USA and a flattened Mountain West. We could also move a team like maybe Texas State out to the Mountain West. So to recap, this is the new American Conference. This is the new ACC, losing Florida State and Clemson, but adding Tulane and USF. Big Ten remained unchanged. Big 12 added UConn and Liberty. Conference USA stayed mostly the same, but of course lost Liberty. Notre Dame will remain independent. The MAC remains entirely the same. The Mountain West is basically the new Pac-12, where they don't really have anybody in the conference. Pac-12 had a reverse merger with the Mountain West and have become basically the Pac-10 again at this point. The SEC decides to take in Florida State and Clemson and become like what is truly the best conference in college football, with absolutely zero doubt at this point. And then the Sun Belt stayed entirely the same, although I did get rid of divisions. So now a team like Troy, even though they lost to Louisiana, would be one of the top dogs in the Sun Belt going into next season. Let me know what you guys think of this. Are there changes you would like to see me make? I think that we can roll with this for at least the next season or possibly two. And also let me know what you think about the pivot to the Big 12 instead of the ACC. I did see a comment that mentioned that the ACC is much weaker now, obviously, with losing Florida State and Clemson. So UConn would just like surpass the competition in the ACC after a couple more years with the way we're trending, and that the Big 12 makes a bit more sense because it has a bit better competition at this point than the ACC. And also, let me know what you think we should do with Miami in future seasons. I think they're definitely too good to just be the like only top dog in the ACC. So now we are officially into preseason for the year 2026, the year 3 of the dynasty. So the UConn Huskies' first year in the Big 12 will look like this. Versus West Virginia, at Utah, at Arizona, versus Iowa State. We'll play Syracuse in the rivalry matchup for the 3rd year in a row, at BYU, at Arizona State, bye week, at Navy, versus Purdue, versus JMU, at Baylor, and versus Liberty to end the season. Definitely the toughest schedule that UConn has had so far in the series, specifically to start the year, playing West Virginia, Utah, and then Arizona back to back to back. 3 very good teams. It's going to be a tough year for UConn, and I'm thinking that it's very possible that we'll have one down year to start out in the Big 12. I really wouldn't be surprised if we only had about 4 or 5 wins this season, but I guess only time will tell. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and for the continued support. Let me know what you thought of the episode and what I did with the conference realignment. Let me know if you like it, if you hate it, whatever your opinion is, I want to hear it. If you find yourself coming back on the regular and you aren't already subscribed, go ahead and hit that sub button for me. It does help me out a lot. And I will see you guys in the next episode, where we'll get started in year number 3 in UConn's first season in the Big 12.